Peace, peace. Bargani, Islam, Salam, Hetepu, Rahubat. Gino Lakuni, Nani Chief Noble Bandele, Elamine in the building. And today we got the Moorish TikToks. All Moorish. We're going to drop this science on you, all right? So let's get into this, man. Let me move this out the way. Let's get into this, dog. Before we get into this, though, before we get into it, please go check out our website, indigenousmoors.org. It's your one stop shop. It's got all of our information, our books. All right, let's go look. Check it out. You scroll down, you see all our books. I got books from King El Bey, from Abdullah, Brother Abdullah. Got books from Amin Ma'at Ra, all that. So you can find these books here on the site and on Amazon.com. So that's what we talking about. So before we get into, before we get into this too, y'all, please like these videos and subscribe. Like these videos, subscribe. Okay, help our algorithm, right? So, like I said, today we're gonna get into some Moorish science and things of that nature. Okay, I got a few uh, really good videos I want to get into today, and the first video we're gonna get into, we're gonna start this off. All right, we're gonna start this off with some Moorish New Year, since it's the so-called New Year, right? So let's talk about it from a Moorish perspective, from Moorish science. All right, so let's go.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is a production of the Moorish Benefit Corporation. Today, I want to speak directly to every Islamic American Moor. The so-called months September, October, November, and December come from Latin. Septem means 7, octo means 8, novum means 9, and decim means 10. Yet, in the modern calendar, these months are labeled 9, 10, 11, and 12. Why does the year begin in the dead of winter? January 1st marks the defeat of the Moors in 1492 AD. While you celebrate New Year's Day, they celebrate your defeat. You have to stop reenacting European traditions. The true beginning of the year is Al-Rabi', spring, when the earth revives, when creation renews. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is a production of the Moorish Benefit.
Y'all, and like we talked about this on the last video. If you guys haven't checked out my last video, we went into like the New Year's thing. We talked about all that, so I'm not gonna get into that. But they kind of just go along with what what I'm seeing and what I'm thinking. All right, so let's get to this next video. All right, I'm gonna put this next one up. We're gonna pull this next one up. Now this one kind of threw me off. I hadn't even heard this, but this was some good information, y'all. So let's get into this. Let me take myself off, put it full screen. Let's see what they're talking about. All right, let's go.
The Titanic wasn't an accident. It was a targeted hit on the indigenous Moorish nobility. Don't believe me? Go look up Joseph Philippe Lemercier La Roche, a black engineer from the LeConte political dynasty, traveling first class during the Titanic era. The original Jacob Astor, Isidor Straus, and Guggenheim were originally all Moors, but of course they only show you the pale version. They bleached the history to hide the Moorish tenure of the land. But the bloodline is the Grail. Why'd they do it? Because these titans were against the establishment of the League of Nations and the plan of experts designed to seize world treasuries. Look up Paul Cupp, ship owner and global merchant, before the U.S. even knew what it was. Look up Madam C.J. Walker, an Aurelia Walker, controlling millions, property, factories, and social power. Look up Robert Reed Church Sr., black millionaire of the South. You think we were just slaves off boats? Houseway, I'm showing you the receipts they hid. Black aristocrats in the Titanic era. Families with land, gold, ships, and banks. We weren't begging, we were building empires. That's why the Titanic wasn't just a tragedy, it was a targeted hit. Connect the dots. The truth ain't lost, it's been buried, and I'm here to dig it up. They love to say Joseph LaRoche was the only black man on the Titanic, but that's only because they already whitewashed the rest. The original Astors, Guggenheims, Strausses, and LeConte bloodlines were Moors long before their portraits were corrected and their history rewritten. Once America and Europe adopted the bleaching of nobility, any elite family was painted over, literally and legally. So when the Titanic sank, they could safely call LaRoche the only one, because they hid the truth of the others. The whole narrative depends on Moors being erased from high society, because if the world learns black families sat at the top of global finance, diplomacy, and science, the slave story collapses overnight. LaRoche wasn't the only one. He was just the only one they couldn't erase.
Man, now I have not heard this. I've heard about Titanic stories and things of that nature, right? We heard about how the bankers were on the boat and things of that nature, but I hadn't really heard about the melanated, the Moors being on there, and there was more Moors, more people that were melanated Moorish descent on the Titanic. That's new to me, yo. So if y'all heard that or heard anything like that, man, just make comment. Please comment in the comment section. You know what I'm saying? Because that's heavy stuff. But I'm not gonna. I'm gonna keep it going. We're gonna keep this going, right? So got my boy Taj Tariq Bey in the building. We always gotta have some Taj. So let's see what Taj is talking about. All right.
And that's science of linguistics, astrology, cosmogony, cosmology, philosophies, trigonometry, algebra, horticulture, etc. All of that in the 7 liberal arts came from Moors. And that's called the Renaissance. And this is where the Christians get in their church the term to be born again, because that's what Renaissance means. And the Moors brought them Europeans out of the Dark Ages into the modern light, and that knowledge is codified and symbolized and referred to as Ma'at, or Ma, mother, Ma'at, and the sun, S-U-N and S-U-S-O-N, Ma, son, Masonry, Masonry. That's what Masonry is.
We as Moors of the Western empires, right, going all the way from the Horn, not the Horn, but from the Cape, all the way from the Ivory Coast, all the way up around into Mauritania, what is now Mauritania, Morocco, Tunis, Tripoli, Egypt, and then going all the way back down to the Ivory Coast, Cameroon, and then inside Mali, all of that was the western portion of the empire. So we here, as the Moors, have to understand that we are the torchbearers of that bloodline. Because after Granada, which one thing they don't tell you is that after the expulsion of Granada, all of the noblemen and people like that already had estates set up for them over here, because those estates was established for them over there. Because remember, it was our ancestors from northwestern and northern Africa that went up into what they now call España, set up all those dominions as far up into the southern France, what we call the Pyrenees today.
Now are you free? Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know if it's copyright, but you see all these pictures. Like this right here is German. That was like a German picture. All these is in Europe. All this is in Europe. And then when you hear these Albions trying to say, so-called white people trying to say that this is not Moors ain't black, then what is all this? You know what I'm saying? What is all this? Well, who are all? Who paints this dark skinned person, right? And then go try to say that there's no black people that was there. You know, these people these people don't exist. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's keep it a buck. Let's just keep it a buck. You see what I'm saying? So I had to cut that guy. I mean, it's a lot of I don't know the copyright though. But you guys get to see the pictures, man. If you haven't seen these pictures before, these are all Moors. Look how he's dressed. Look how he's dressed. You know what I'm saying? They can kill me with all that noise. They can kill all that noise about Moors not being black and Moors being Arab. You know, miss me with all that. Let's keep it going though. Let's keep it going. All right. Let's check out this video right here.
The conversation that I think is a fascinating one, the conversation of reparations, because there can be no doubt that something horrible happened to the black community and they're still suffering from it, especially in the Deep South when you look at these places where the people who lived are the direct descendants of slaves.
Yeah.
And then these are the same impoverished neighborhoods that no one's ever done anything to try to fix.
Right.
So how do you fix it?
You first have to start with the subconscious mind and the black mind. And the problem with the black mind is the fact that the black mind starts off with a defeatist mentality. From the day you're born, you're taught the white man's out to get you. So you start off with a boogeyman, and then you're taught that you're a slave, right? So when your subconscious mind believes that the beginnings of your race is a slave, how do you aspire to be more than that? So in order to correct the black community, you have to teach black history, or so-called black history, or what I would say African history, in chronological order. Before we were slaves, we were kings. So how do you have a whole entire nation of 40 some odd million black people, and majority of them never heard of Queen Angola, who never heard of the Songhai Empire, the Mali Empire, none of this stuff, right? King Mansa Musa. How do you raise a people's level of awareness about this stuff? And then how do you elevate them to want to do things in life when they think they are a slave? That's the first thing that you have to do to help black people. You have to teach them who they are.
That expression, before they were slaves, they were kings. The problem with that is a king is a monarch, and a monarch is one person who controls giant groups of people. You can't have a bunch of kings. There's not a lot of kings. You can't have a nation of kings.
Correct. But that's very different from saying, that we had 4 kings, right? Well, let's say there were just 4, right? Mm-hmm. That's better than saying Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and these free slaves, right? You actually have to see at least one king.
I see what you're saying.
At least say.
So see one advanced human being that also looks like you, that came from the same part of the world where your ancestors came from. So recognize that the trajectory that you and your family are on is a direct result of being enslaved. If someone was enslaved in the past and brought over here against their will. Mm-hmm. That's why there's the negative mindset. That's why there's a negative self-image, is because there's this great history of oppression.
Yeah. When you think you're a slave, you can't operate outside of that.
And even if you don't think you're a slave, you think you're inferior. I had, do you know who Miss Pat is?
No.
Hilarious comedian. One of the funniest human beings alive. And she was here, and one of the things she was talking about was when she was younger, that when she would see white people, she wouldn't look them in the eye. She would get nervous. She felt inferior being around them. Mm-hmm. She just wanted to get away. She didn't feel like she belonged.
Right. And that's a product of not knowing who you are, not knowing your own personal power. When you look at the Second Punic Wars of Carthage, you had Hannibal went through the Alps, which is a mission impossible, and he went all the way to the doors of Rome. And Rome said, "Yo, we ain't coming outside to fight you, bro. We ain't coming." That's how strong the power of the army was. They said, "We don't want to fight." They knew if they came outside those gates, they would get their ass whooped. So how do you have a people that walk around not knowing that Hannibal Barker is a well-studied war general. Today, the Pentagon still studies him. Right. So how are you operating in America as a black person and not know who Hannibal Barker is?
Well, it's difficult, I think, for people that were born in America and all the known ancestors from America to even relate. Like my family is mostly from Italy and Sicily, and some of them from Ireland. Mm-hmm. I don't relate at all. I visit Italy in the summer times. I don't relate at all.
Right. So then the other psyop is the fact that we were the natives. We were not brought here on slave ships. That's not economically sound. It just doesn't make sense. So when Christopher Columbus got here, Christopher Columbus got to the Caribbean, according to primary source, right. They basically said the first thing he did was take slaves. He didn't bring slaves. He took slaves from the island. He captured people. So when you have colonization, you got to remember, the United States was only built 13 colonies at first, right? You think this whole land was empty? No, there were natives here. Right. But today we're taught that natives is some other people. No, natives are the melanated African being that has come here since the beginning of the Mali Empire. We're talking about 14th, 13th century. We had already come here from Africa.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We had already come here.
To the United States or to
this landmass we call the United States. So the way the ocean current works is it works from Africa, leaves out of West Africa, comes to South America and the Caribbean. That's just how the currents go. You don't need no paddle boat or nothing. It'll just, the currents will just take you there, and then you travel up. But we had already been here. All you got to do is look up the story of Sarah Rector. Sarah Rector is a wealthy so-called Native American. I think she was Choctaw tribe or one of these tribes, but she was wealthy, and she wanted a VI pass to go somewhere, and they had her classified as a free person. Why don't we know about the wealthy so-called black people in America? Why don't we know that there were black slave owners in America? Why is that not taught? Why is it not so?
How many black slave owners were there?
Man, the natives here had slaves. They were trading slaves with the so-called white man.
Well, they definitely did that. Natives enslaved people of other tribes.
Right. So if those people are us, the so-called black man, if those natives were us, then we have to tell that history and say how we did have territories and we did, carry out commerce, and we weren't slaves. We were slave owners.
Right, but the majority of African Americans that lived here were brought over here.
No,
that's
not economically sound.
What do you mean by it's not economically sound? Like there were slave ships, right?
All right, let's say you wanted to have you wanted to sell marijuana, right?
Right.
Would you import marijuana or would you grow it here if it's already here?
Well, it depends on whether or not marijuana grew here.
Well, can you grow marijuana here?
You can, but we're just talking about marijuana. Like, what if we're talking about something that you can't grow here?
So what I'm saying is, people were already here. Does it make sense to go all the way to this other continent to bring people on the boat when we know that half of your stock is going to die? You wouldn't do that.
So how many people do you think were brought over from Africa on slave ships? Because that definitely happened.
I don't believe it.
What do you mean you don't believe it?
I don't believe that story.
You don't believe that Africans were brought over on slave ships?
Correct. I believe it may have happened, maybe people were brought over as slaves, but I don't think that the black people in America came from Africa on slave ships. I believe the people that were here were slowly conquered. First, they got the East Coast, and then they started spreading out west little by little, conquering. And when you conquer a tribe, what do? You enslave them. They're POWs, right?
Okay.
That's what you do. So after you conquer this tribe, you make them slaves. Now, how do you conquer the natives here? So let's say you got this tribe is warring against this tribe. Well, this tribe goes talk to the white man. White man says, yo, if you help me wipe out these people, then boom, I'll help you with whatever. So they get together and they wipe out this other tribe. Now, guess what? The white man now outnumbers this tribe. So he wipes them out. You just kill two birds with one stone. You just keep moving like that.
But I'm still confused. There's a great history of slave ships being brought over from Africa with Africans that became slaves and worked in the South. So, do you think that's lies?
History is his story.
Right.
What about my story? Is my story not valid?
But if you do 23andMe on someone from these parts of the country, you'll find out that
23andMe.
Well, that's real.
So
what is 23andMe?
So when I take a 23andMe test, right?
Yes.
What's it going to tell me about Africa?
That's a good question. We should find out.
Probably going to say, oh, you're from Kenya, or you're from Angola, you're from this, right?
Right.
These things, these borders were created by Europe.
In terms, yes,
right.
In terms of like what parts of Africa and how it's distributed and what's a country and what's not a country.
Yeah,
right.
These
by
names,
the Afrikaners and Dutch. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can't classify me based upon a European name.
Well, I understand that, but they're saying geographically, geographic location. You can call it whatever name you want.
Right.
They can tell you where your genetics originated. Like
right.
I've got some weird shit in me. I got like 1% Asian. I don't know why it's there. 1.6% African.
Okay.
There's also weird stuff that you find in your DNA that like your ancestors and ancestors.
Right.
So let's walk
down that. Let's walk down that path, right? So either way, if you take black people here in America, you do their DNA sample and it point back to Africa, what does that say? It says black people in America are Africans. Now the argument is, were we brought here or were we already here? Did we bring ourselves here or did the white man bring us here? You see, when you say the white man brought us here, what you're doing is you're removing our ability to transport ourselves. You're saying, oh, we didn't know anything about boats. That's what you're trying to tell me. You're trying to tell me that we didn't know that there was a landmass here. Only the holy white man knew there was land to the west. But when you look at the holy white man, he said, when we got here, we met black people. Go look at the primary source. We got here, we met black people. We got the Caribbean, we met black people. You think the Caribbean is right next to America and they weren't in America?
It makes sense that you do have people that have traveled, whether it's Polynesians that traveled to Hawaii or people. I mean, there's the Olmecs who were thousands and thousands of years ago in South America. They have clearly African faces.
Yes.
I mean, really, the noses, the lips. I mean, they look African.
Right.
And that was a South American culture that existed, and we don't know anything about them other than the fact that they have these gigantic stone sculptures that have African faces.
Well, like again, just go to. If you can pull up the ocean currents,
I've seen that.
You've seen that, man.
Well, you know who Graham Hancock is?
I've heard about him. Yeah,
you read his stuff. It's really fascinating because he's all about that. He's all about the fact that the idea that human beings were probably living in advanced civilizations far longer than 14,000 years ago. And they did travel all over the world, and that you do find the remnants of these ancient cultures that we have no explanation for throughout the Amazon, and throughout different parts of South America and Central America.
I mean, when you go and you look at real European history, right? You had the Magyars would believe that if they took a bath, it was bad.
Right.
They didn't even want to change their clothes. They thought that dirty was purity. When we talk about the Moors going into Spain and into Europe, the stories in the history, our history, says that when we met the so-called Caucasian, he was sleeping in the barn with the animals, and we told him, no, you can't sleep in the barn with animals. We taught them etiquette. We taught them running water. We brought that technology to Europe. Now, if we brought the technology to Europe that saved Europe from the Black Plague, you mean to tell me that if we saved the white race, that we weren't already in America already? When we brought the technology, when Rome was dependent on Africa for food, remember when the Black Plague hit Rome, the cause was one of the officials was stealing the grain that was coming from Africa. So there was famine hit Rome. If your source of sustenance is from Africa, how are you superior? You're not. You get your food from me. So if you get your food from me, who's more likely to travel this globe?
Yeah. Excuse me, y'all. You said a mouthful. Facts. You said a mouthful. Yeah. Brother said a mouthful. He went into some things. And I know and also he made mention of Mansa Musa. And I don't know if y'all seen this, and I bring up Mansa Musa, as a Moor per se because he does play a part in Moorish history, right? So y'all knew Mansa Musa is the richest man ever, right? All right, so check. Just tell me, and y'all gonna see it. Like, look at this, look at this. They said they did a 3D model of how Mansa Musa looked, and I'm like, is that Kanye West? Right? I mean, you see the picture of, but tell me they ain't got this brother. They tell me they ain't got Mansa Musa looking like Ye, man. Come on, man. Yeezy, Mansa Musa, Yeezy. But that go back to also, like they say he looked like this, and Kanye looking like he is. I mean, I heard the brother talking about we not from Africa and we were all from here, but I definitely disagree. I do believe that we are we indigenous to America as far as melanated people, but there was Africans that were brought over here. Maybe not what they said as many, but they were. And this kind of just shows you, like, look, they got Mansa Musa from Africa, from Timbuktu, right? Looking like yay, man. Tell me that ain't funny, man. Tell me that ain't funny, though. Tell me. So, all right, I'm gonna keep it going. We're gonna keep it going. All right. Since we're looking at um Moorish history, you know what I'm saying? Let's keep it going. Let's so tell me what y'all think of this.
Since the Renaissance period, jewels of Moors, which consisted of earrings, cameos, brooches, and pendants covered in gold and gemstones, have been made and circulated across Europe, namely in regions across the Mediterranean in France and Italy, further up north in England, and further central in Austria. These jewel pieces were typically held and circulated by royalty. A prime example was King Louis XIV of France, who held a few of these pieces in his collection. Much of these jewels were carved in Italian workshops and were only accessible to royal, noble, and ultra-wealthy circles.
It's crazy how all this jewelry is out here, with our faces on it, and we really they ain't got a clue. Tell me, like we ain't even got a clue. They Europe running around here with our jewelry, wearing us, wearing melanated, wearing Moors. You know, it's crazy work, right? But it don't stop there. It don't stop there. Let's keep it rolling. Check.
Blatant examples of whitewashing featuring Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne the Great.
Oh, hey, this was crazy. He talking about Charlemagne. If y'all know who Charlemagne is, if you don't, check him out. I ain't talking about Charlemagne off of Breakfast Club either. You know what I'm saying? We talking about the Charlemagne. So check this.
The father of Europe. When you search up this emperor on Google, the typical images you'll see are pale-skinned imaginary illustrations, which do not show the true likeness of the emperor. The true likeness of the emperor derives from a statue located in Zurich, Switzerland in the Grossmünster Church. This statue bears witness to the emperor's racial makeup, that being a black man. Here, we see a remodeled statue which bears no resemblance to the original statue and has a more Asian appearance to it. Here's a stained, glassed image of Charlemagne with his queen consort Fastrada, which was the emperor's third marriage, located at the Wormser Dom in Germany. They're both represented with brown skin to depict their original likeness. Finally, here's a shrine of the emperor located at a church cathedral in Germany.
All right, what y'all think, man? Does it make sense? I mean, Charlemagne supposed to have been the first king, the first European king. Um, I mean, a lot of the monarchies were dark skinned people. So, I mean, something for y'all to look at, some research. Let me know. Make some comments. All right, we're gonna keep it going. We're gonna keep it going. I'm gonna throw this in here as for Melanated. We're gonna throw this in here because I think that a lot of people, you know, need to hear this. This ain't necessarily Moorish in the sense of Moorish, but this is melanated. Just definitely melanated work right here, right? So let's listen.
You use your religion as an excuse not to stand up and fight your natural enemy. And the only people on this earth, you use your religion as an excuse not to stand up and fight your natural enemy.
Am I messing it up or what? What the heck is going on?
And the only people on this earth, Brother Alton, the only people on this earth that use their religion and their so-called belief in God as an excuse not to stand up and confront their enemy is my people. Negroes are the only people I know that do this. Even the Buddhists, as gentle as they are, study Kung Fu so they can defend their temples. And you know how gentle they are. But y'all talk all that foolishness when it comes down confronting this white man because you're scared to death of him.
Yo, I just had to throw that in there, man, just to wake y'all up. Wake you up. Yeah. Now we back to regular schedule program. Let's get back to it. All right. Let's see. Like I said, y'all please like and subscribe. If y'all hear me, please like and subscribe. All right, so let's look at this one. The Moorish roots of Black America. All right. Check it out.
Welcome back to Moorish History TV. Did you know the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida were once claimed by Spain, and that Black Moors were among the first Africans documented there? The Carolinas were once a part of Spanish Florida. Black Moors were documented in early America. In Spanish slave records from Seville, Cadiz, and Cartagena, we find the term Negros de Nación Morisca. This phrase identified Black Africans from Islamic regions of North and West Africa, descendants of the Moors. Negros de Nación Morisca equals Black Moors of Islamic Africa. The phrase Negros de Nación de Tierra de Moros appears in Inquisition records and baptismal registries. It means blacks from the land of the Moors, describing enslaved Black Muslims from Morocco, Mauritania, and Mali. De Tierra de Moros equals from the land of the Moors. The phrase Negros de Nación de Tierra de Moros, blacks from the land of the Moors, appears in Catholic Church records, slave registers, and Inquisition files from Cuba, Mexico, and Florida. These classifications weren't just used in Latin America. They show up in records from places that later became part of the United States. Florida, the Gulf Coast, Louisiana, and even the Carolinas when they were under Spanish claim. These records appeared in Spanish Florida and the Gulf South. When the British entered the slave trade, they used the phrase Moro country to describe Muslim areas of West Africa, like Senegambia. Africans taken from Moro country were often literate in Arabic and deeply rooted in Moorish traditions. Moro country equals British term for Islamic West Africa. Some of these Black Muslims arrived in Charleston, South Carolina, and coastal Georgia. One of the most famous was Omar ibn Said, enslaved in North Carolina, who wrote Islamic prayers in Arabic while in bondage. Omar ibn said a Black Moor in North Carolina. But not all Moors in the Americas were Muslim. Spanish and Portuguese records also documented Judaeus Moros, Black and brown Jews of Moorish descent. These were Jewish Moors and Sephardic Jews expelled from Iberia, some of whom were enslaved or exiled to the Americas. They appear in records as Judaeus Praetos, Black Jews, or Judaeus de Nacau Mura, Jews of the Moorish nation often described as dark-skinned or African. Judaeus Moros equals Black Jews of Moorish nation classified in Brazil, Cuba, and Iberian colonies. The same colonial powers that used Negros de Nación Morisca also documented Judaeus Moros in the Americas, especially in Brazil, Cuba, Mexico, and Spanish Florida. They were free enslaved or crypto-Jewish, practicing their faith in secret. And like the Black Muslims they traveled alongside, they carried the legacy of Moorish Iberia across the Atlantic. Judaeus Moros, found in Brazil, Mexico, Louisiana, Florida. In colonial Florida, Louisiana, and the Carolinas, Moorish Muslims and Jewish Moors alike arrived through Spanish and Portuguese trade routes. In St. Augustine, some were recorded in church or military documents. In Louisiana, people of color with Jewish surnames and African ancestry appear in colonial censuses. These were not guesses. They were official identities recorded under terms like Raza Judía, Casta de Moros, and de Nación Hebrea. Black Moors and Jewish Moors reached early U.S. territories. So when we speak of the Moorish presence in the Americas, we must include Muslim Moors from West Africa and Morocco, Judaeus Moros, the Jewish Moors of Iberia and the diaspora, and the millions who were reclassified, renamed, and nearly erased from memory. Their identities appear in the records of Spain, Portugal, and early colonial America, not as myths, but as documented truth. Muslim Moors, Jewish Moors, one legacy. This is Moorish History TV. Like, share, and comment #Moorish America to
Yeah, that's pretty good stuff, man. You know, shout out to Elamir and Cheyenne, you know, for the Moorish History TV. Shout out to y'all, man. Appreciate the work y'all doing. All right, so we got one more to add to that, because you know these Albion, these so-called white people and all that, they always trying to tell us that we not Moorish, that Moorish is Arab. Moorish is Arab, like you know they want us to focus on that. So we showing y'all, Let's take this last one out right here.
So according to the Webster's International Dictionary with history, published in 1910 on page.
All right, my fault, y'all. I always do that. Then it come back.
1407 in the footnotes. It says that the definition of Moor is any dark-skinned person, right? And then it says Moors are just American.
All right, y'all hear that? Any dark-skinned person. Definition of a Moor, any dark-skinned person. So it's not just for an Arab. Arab can be dark-skinned. They can be light-skinned. But any dark-skinned person was a Moor. So yes.
If you're interested in proclaiming your Moorish American nationality and would like to get documents to substantiate that, all you got to do is comment the word Moor below. So,
all right, y'all hear that? So even with us, put our contact info up there. If y'all want to get in touch with us for any information dealing with the Moors or dealing with we're not saying paperwork, but if you want to get like a membership to the temple, you can contact us at this number. You can go to indigenousmoors.org, do the same, and let us know. And appreciate y'all for coming out. Like I said, please like and share this video if y'all enjoyed it. Let everybody else know. And that's it. So appreciate everybody. We about to get up out of here. It's getting late. So enjoy the rest of y'all night. Peace and love. Tutanana.